Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our Real Mom Stories. And I am very lucky today to sit here with somebody who I think is not only hilarious, but just bringing to light so much about what we need to understand about women's health. We both know our friend Perry very well, perimenopause. And I wanted to bring Kara on today to talk more about her Real Mom Stories. So tell us about yourself, Kara.
Well, hello. I am I guess a content creator now. That's my new job. But I'm an educator in the elementary level. But right now I TOC, we call it up here. So teacher on call, very
Hmm.
part-time. So yeah. And I get to do this stuff for
Yeah,
fun too. And
so fun.
yeah, mom.
That's awesome. I didn't know you were an elementary educator. That's wonderful. You are a hero. Absolutely.
Those ones in there every day, they're the ones
Yeah.
that are, yeah, pretty amazing.
Yeah. Um, so I'd love to hear. So you have three children? Two children. Yeah. So I'd love, I guess, if you felt like you could share with us a little bit about maybe your pregnancies or how you felt. Yeah, let's start maybe talk a little bit about your pregnancies and how they felt in your body and your mind. If there's anything you want to share where you think could really resonate with people who might be going through it now or may have had similar experiences.
Okay, I have a 16-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I had one child when I was living in the States, and then I had
Mm,
my second one up here where I live in Canada, and one at 30. How old was I? 35, and
okay.
then one. No, was I 35? Okay, I don't remember now how old I was. 32, and then my other one at 40. So that alone was very different.
Absolutely.
But I had a beautiful pregnancies. Like my body and I suffered, on and off with different sort of ailments throughout since my teens. And I never felt better than when I was pregnant. So I was one of those very lucky women who all the hormones just did wonders. And with my second, I did have sciatica on and off. And I honestly don't remember if I did with my son, but I really remember it with my daughter, but not for extended periods of time. But then my birth stories are very different
Yeah.
because I had great pregnancies, but then my birth stories were a little more difficult or unexpected.
Yeah. I would love to hear about them if you're willing to share. Just again in the vein of we've all been through it and let's talk about it if you want.
Yeah, well, it's funny because we were thinking about like just our thoughts still now about our pregnancies, even though
Right.
we're years later and we're into
Yeah.
puberty at this point or menopause or whichever. And forever I felt a lot of guilt
Mm,
because I had C-sections that I didn't have vaginal birth, and so I hadn't really experienced
mhm,
what I was supposed to experience, but
mhm.
mine were both emergency C-sections. They weren't planned. And then it was later discovered that I had scar tissue on my cervix. My cervix wouldn't dilate,
Yeah.
but they didn't realize that the first time that why. But anyways, I had progesterone because my cervix wasn't no, not progesterone. Sorry, that's what I'm on
Pitocin.
now. Thank you.
That's what I'm on now.
So I had that because I wasn't dilating
Mm,
with my son and I was 2 weeks late overdue.
yeah.
But as soon as I took that, his heart rate
Oh my
crashed.
gosh.
And so then they were like, we think we need to like just have a C-section. In your first time, you're like, oh, okay, and then like 40 minutes later, we have a baby, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they didn't know that I had anything wrong or like wrong with my cervix when it was my
Right.
second. So my doctor then was like, oh yeah, you should be able to still do a vaginal birth, a CVAC, I think it's called.
Yeah. VBAC.
VBAC. Look, I'm getting all of my medical terms really
That's
bang.
okay. That's not why we brought you on.
I don't I don't even what is that other thing I mentioned? Anyway, and so but then sure enough, I was like labored for like I can't remember like a whole day and night and
Oh,
contractions, the water broke, all the things, but
yeah,
yeah, my darn cervix wouldn't
yeah,
open. So then I
yeah.
had another one, and then was later figured out like, oh, I'd had a lead procedure, which probably caused the scar
Oh,
tissue, and then all the dots were connected. But
yeah.
I felt this real like, I don't know, I just felt this like a guilt so much, or I don't know if I want to say shame, but just like that I cheated, you
I
know.
feel, I was on an interview earlier today with someone who also had a C-section and who just like left with this wondering of like, could my body even deliver a baby naturally? If, like that feeling
Absolutely.
of I, a whole birthing person, there's a lot there. It's not clean. I think we talked a lot about how we have this expectation of what we think a birth should be. And then 99% of the times it doesn't come out, baby doesn't come out the way we want it to. And that's hard. And I think it does leave a lasting impression.
Absolutely. And I think we have the ideals of what our
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy, our birth, our first years of motherhood or whatever will look like. And then the reality is,
Yeah.
I remember making that birth plan. Like
Yeah.
I didn't I don't know if I did any of the things that were on my birth plan. Either time.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I remember people telling me that that would be the case. And I remember saying, no, I work out. I'm a yoga teacher. I got this. There's no, I mean, it's kind of like making a plan for your kid. You can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the harder like I think we hang on to that.
Hmm.
And I think that's something I had to work through for sure is hanging on to that ideal as opposed to what actually happens or is happening is what makes everything more difficult or how we have all these feelings of like disappointment or it's like hanging on to that what you thought should have happened or would have. So I've had to work through that, but it's funny because that's still like I still wonder like what would childbirth like what does it feel like?
Yeah. Yeah.
but but on the other hand, maybe my pelvic floor is more intact.
Maybe.
Maybe
Maybe.
I still pee my pants. So I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say, the pelvic floor does get injured on the way out sometimes, but it's really that like constant pressure of the baby pushing down that really does us in.
Okay,
So even if you have a C-section, yeah, it's hard.
right.
Plus the perimenopause changes
The
it a
thinning of
lot.
the wall and
That's
everything. Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Happens to us all. So,
It does. And I think this all happens to us all. We don't talk about it, how we're all maybe walking around with feelings of disappointment and shame and on and off. I mean, not all the time, but yeah, we have it all. And how was your postpartum periods, like your immediate postpartum periods with those kiddos?
so once again, I think those hormones just did wonders for me because I was someone who I've been on antidepressants since
Mm,
my late 20s. And through both of my pregnancies, Um, it was deemed like I wasn't sure if I would go off them or not, but
mm-hmm.
because like for the baby's health, but it was deemed by both my different doctors at the time because I lived in two different places. So we both came to the I would stay on them because it would be best for my health, especially postpartum. So I don't know if what that would have looked like if I wasn't on them. So I think that helped in my postpartum, like the immediate, like the first year after I'm saying, because I know postpartum depression, a friend of mine had it very severely and very, very, very scary. And another
Very
thing that we
scary.
don't talk much about because of the shame, I think,
Yeah.
connected to it. So
And how medication can help, and it's okay to take medication if you're a new mom. Yeah.
yeah. And so I was on that, which I think supported but also I just like felt my body just felt so great. And then I was lucky, like there was a bit of, trouble latching. Like,
Hmm.
for my first child, like I breastfed both, but I did breastfeed and I did formula for my first. And then I think I mostly just breastfed for my second, I think. But don't. And so there was that. And so that was a pretty, like, an okay process for me. Like, but I know there's a lot around that too about
Yeah,
if you
it's
have
hard.
troubles with or you can't, or you choose to, not whatever. So I was lucky in that. And then I was able, I mean, in Canada up here, we have, like, I took a year.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And when I was in the States, I had 6 weeks, but it turned into 12 weeks because of the C-section.
Yeah,
So then I was on, I think it was called long-term disability,
yeah.
what I had to go on. And then I used my sick days as a teacher. And then I got to summer. So I got like kind of 4.5 months off in total. But so the experience very different when you are able to stay home
Yeah.
with your child.
Can you talk, were there differences in your care, your prenatal care, your delivery, and your postpartum care from the US to the States?
You know what? I'd say both were like very positive and good, but we had coverage in the States, like as a teacher. And then my husband at the time, he had coverage through his work. Um, I had a private room, and because it was a C-section, I had 5 days in the hospital, and I had to, do certain things before they would, like, what is it called? Not eject you.
Discharge,
Distract. Look at me and my words today.
but
Really,
eject is good.
before they kicked me out of the hospital. So, and then it was similar here.
Okay.
And then I had like also a room to myself and multiple days in that. So the care was like really good. The only difference was I did in the States, my baby got a bill when he was like 3 days old for like $5,000 or something.
Wow.
Whatever wasn't covered.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my
We didn't
God.
get a bill. We didn't get a bill for my baby
That's
up here.
good. Did you do any like pelvic floor PT, or did your OB recommend anything to take care of your body? No,
Not that I can remember. I'm not saying they didn't, but it's not sticking out.
that's okay.
And I feel like whenever someone says that, then right away I start doing Kegels and I'm like, better catch up.
Did you? Do you
Yeah.
feel, I know, quick, quick. Let me think. Oh, so the one more thing I think we should touch on is come back, come back. So you said you had a little bit of sciatica. See, there goes my brain. You said you had a little bit of sciatica. Do you think your body changed? Did your pregnancy change your body in a way that hasn't gone back, that you realize, like, hey, I haven't had this, like wider ribs or pelvic weirdness or a belly pooch? And I'm not saying you have any of those things, but like, and then there's from pregnancy or sciatica on and off.
You know what? I've had the odd sort of sciatica thing. And honestly, it's funny but very sporadic throughout the whole years. But it immediately takes me back to this one night. I remember when the pain was the worst. I was staying at a friend's in Seattle. And it's funny because it takes me right back there. And that was when I was pregnant with my daughter. But otherwise, not really. I have to say that I've noticed way more bodily changes during perimenopause than I did when I was pregnant and postpartum, which is wild
Yeah,
because there's like what to expect when you're expecting, like,
right,
you know,
right.
but no, not the same so far for what to expect when you're,
Yeah, we need that book.
we need that. Maybe it exists now. I don't know.
It probably does in many
Probably
forms.
does. There's been a real onslaught
Yeah,
lately.
it's probably. All right. So, would you have done anything differently if you could do it all over again?
From a health standpoint, no. Like I really liked my doctors. Like I think you have to have a doctor that you love and you trust and So no, I was good with my care. No, I really don't think I could. Less pressure on sort of all the things you need to buy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the worry and having the plan and having to stick to the don't worry about the plan. Don't worry. Be like adaptable and look, you gotta go get your kids, get them.
Thank you for doing this. I'm going to stop recording. Actually, I'm going to say thank you, Karis. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories with us. Because, like I said, lots of different experiences of lots of other women out there. And I think it's always great to talk about it.